Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham and we're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now says he's ready to implement President Donald Trump's plan for the U.S. taking over Gaza. Netanyahu says the new Gaza will not be governed by neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. The Philippines accuses China of dangerous provocations after a Chinese Navy helicopter flies within 10 feet of a Filipino aircraft. This comes just days after a Chinese fighter jet carried out an unsafe military conduct by firing flares in front of an Australian aircraft. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi hosts Qatar's Emir in New Delhi. The two nations signed agreements to boost bilateral trade and investments in energy and technology. Mexico issues a second warning to Google demanding the restoration of the Gulf of Mexico's name on Google Maps. Mexico says the next steps include legal intervention as Google's actions violate its sovereignty. And Brazil issues a first-of-its-kind heat alert in Rio de Janeiro as temperatures cross 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Officials say at least 3,000 have been hospitalized for heat-related issues as the city shuts down schools and businesses. We begin in the United States, where thousands took to the streets to protest against President Donald Trump's policies. The rallies were organized by the 50501 movement across the country yesterday, coinciding with President's Day holiday, which was meant to honor the nation's former presidents. Now 50501 stands for 50 states, 50 cities, one day, which has gone from being a grassroots activity to a large-scale movement against the Trump administration.
We're here because we're trying to protest the overreach that President Trump and Elon Musk are using to ruin our government and ruin our image around the world, honestly, because we fought for a strong America that helps people, that does the right thing, and we want to make sure that we maintain that legacy for future generations.
Now, one of the largest rallies was held on Capitol Hill here in Washington, D.C., and thousands of people also protested in New York City, Boston, Austin, Texas, and Denver, Colorado. Rallies were also seen in Los Angeles, Tallahassee, Florida, and Cincinnati, Ohio. Demonstrators marched against a range of topics, including President Trump's push for peace talks regarding Ukraine, as well as his domestic policies, which include the large-scale layoffs of federal employees. Dissent also grew against President Trump's closest ally, Elon Musk, and the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Now, this is as DOGE tries to get access to highly sensitive data of taxpaying Americans, and as Musk urges the Trump administration to grant him permission to audit the IRS.
I think that Congress needs to step in and protect the power of the purse. I don't think that DOGE has the right to have our personal information, our personal data. I don't think that DOGE has the right to cut programs.
I think he's an ass. I think that he was not elected to anything. He should not have this much power. The fact that he's been given a blank check is terrifying. And I really wish that Congress would actually do their job, as people are chanting, and do something about the fact that this is an unelected citizen who has all this power of the government. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has no experience working in government. He shouldn't be doing any of this. And the fact that Trump is allowing this or encouraging this is terrifying.
Meanwhile, several Democrats joined the anti-Trump and Musk rallies and accused the White House of replacing a merit-based system with that of crony capitalism. The latest round of protests comes just 2 weeks after similar rallies were held across the country on the 5th of February. And it all underscores just how thousands of Americans are expressing their frustration with the current administration. And staying with the Trump administration, the White House is now scrambling to hire back employees who worked at the National Nuclear Security Administration, or the NNSA, which is housed within the Department of Energy. Now, this comes after the Department of Government Agency, or DOGE, reportedly ordered the firing of more than 300 NNSA staff under its cost-cutting plans. DOGE requested the layoffs without knowing that the Energy Department staffers were specialized in handling America's nuclear weapons. After firing the employees on Friday of last week, the Trump administration is now trying to rehire them after realizing the serious blunder. But now the fired employees had some of the highest levels of security clearances and were responsible for designing, handling, and building the U.S. nuclear stockpile. One of the hardest hit offices was in Texas, where at least 30% of the workforce was fired overnight. And the Trump administration was unaware that the Texas office was tasked with reassembling nuclear warheads, which is one of the most sensitive jobs in the nuclear sector. Now the Trump administration is desperately trying to trace the sacked employees, but are unable to track down many because they don't have their updated contact information. Meanwhile, the White House has also begun firing hundreds of Federal Aviation Administration employees weeks after the fatal mid-air crash in Washington, D.C. These layoffs, too, are a part of the cost-cutting measures proposed by Elon Musk's DOGE. And now many federal employees are cashing in on the president's buyout offer and quitting the workforce entirely.
And the reason why I took this offer is because, we're already such a small program and we're not considered mission critical employees to the IRS. We're not handling tax season, not on the phone. So there was already talks about our program potentially getting cut in the past. And with the current administration, there was just no strong guarantee that my job would last under, the next 4 years.
We already knew that we were getting a return to work. March 1st, everybody had to be 100% in the office. So I was at that point, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to resign. So when the buyout was first presented, at the time I was like, oh, this seems like it's going to be very helpful. This is great. But then also very quickly came the idea that this seems too good to be true. The federal government saying all federal workers who would like to sign up for the deferred resignation and resign, you'll not have to work and get paid for 7 to 8 months. Full benefits, full salary.
These recent layoffs are just the latest mass firings under the Trump administration as it attempts to cut federal costs. But with nuclear security and the aviation industry at stake, will the premature firing spell disaster for President Trump? Only time will tell. And shifting focus to Europe, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused the United States of trying to please Russia's Vladimir Putin in what can only be considered as the first visible pushback against the Trump administration. President Zelensky said he does not support the pace at which the White House is pushing talks with Putin. Zelensky added that he will not accept a ceasefire deal with Russia if the United States does not include Ukraine in the talks. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio met his Russian counterpart in Saudi Arabia, and the two diplomats discussed a possible meeting between President Trump and Putin.
I told President Trump that we want to sign an agreement, but when we reviewed the details, we saw that there are no security guarantees. Security guarantees must be somehow reflected in this memorandum. Ukraine will not take part in the talks in Saudi Arabia. Ukraine did not know anything about them. Ukraine regards any negotiations on Ukraine without Ukraine as ones that have no result, and we cannot recognize any agreements about us made without us, and will not recognize such agreements.
Now, European leaders from Germany, Sweden, Norway, Poland, and other NATO allies met French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris on Monday, and the leaders announced that Europe must be included in any peace talks involving the war in Ukraine. Just 2 days after the United Kingdom offered to send its troops to Kyiv, Sweden, Norway, and France have also floated the idea of deploying their troops to Ukraine as well. However, Germany, Italy, and Poland have rejected the idea, warning that any NATO deployment would only increase hostilities with Russia.
Europe must play its role, and I'm prepared to consider committing British forces on the ground alongside others if there is a lasting peace agreement. But there must be a US backstop. because a US security guarantee is the only way to effectively deter Russia from attacking Ukraine again.
Poland will support Ukraine, as it has done so far, organizationally, in accordance with our financial capabilities. In terms of humanitarian and military aid, we do not anticipate sending Polish soldiers to Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Russia says it will not participate in the peace talks if Europe is allowed a seat at the negotiating table.
The European philosophy has not gone anywhere, so I don't know what can they do at the negotiation table. If they continue scheming some tricky ideas on freezing the conflict while themselves, per usual, as they like and usually do, just mean continue the war, why invite them there?
Now, as the talks move towards an actual possibility, President Trump has sent National Security Advisor Mike Waltz to accompany Secretary Rubio for talks with the Russians in Saudi Arabia. As President Zelensky refuses to accept the deal, which does not include his country, it remains to be seen whether President Trump will agree to this request or strike a deal with Putin, regardless of Ukraine's concerns. Germany stands at a defining moment. The snap elections on February 23rd will shape its political and economic future. And with the collapse of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's coalition, 4 contenders are vying for power. For the first time ever, the far-right AfD is ahead in the polls as it promises a different vision for Germany, including economic revival and stricter immigration policies. The race is fierce and the stakes are high. Who will emerge as the next leader of Europe's biggest economy? Our next report goes inside.
Germany is at a crossroads. A sudden snap election on February 23rd will decide its next chancellor, shaping the nation's future. With economic concerns, immigration debates, and geopolitical challenges looming. 4 candidates stand ready to lead, and each brings a unique vision, hoping to steer Germany through uncertain times. Friedrich Merz of the center-right Christian Democratic Union leads the polls.
I will then claim to be elected Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany in the German Bundestag.
A seasoned politician and pro-business advocate, he promises economic revival. His Agenda 2030 plan includes tax cuts, military expansion, and tougher immigration laws. And just like any other candidate, Merz envisions a stronger Germany both economically and globally. He insists on stricter asylum rules and permanent border controls. Though his stance on using AfD votes has drawn criticism, he remains the front-runner. And his slogan, "A Germany we can be proud of again," encapsulates his vision.
The question, however, is how much we will be able to achieve beyond the AfD in Germany in the future. The answer to this question depends on one very simple word. The word is the margin. How much margin will we have to all other parties?
Chancellor Olaf Scholz seeks another term despite a turbulent tenure. His center-left Social Democratic Party struggles in the polls, but he remains steadfast.
We have to make sure that Europe overcomes the challenges of the future in a strong and sovereign manner and with its back straight. I am certain that we will be able to develop a clear position on this. And the second issue is how we can further develop transatlantic relations and also advance our own expenditure on security and cooperation for security in Europe.
Scholz prioritizes investment in infrastructure, higher wages, and social welfare. He supports Ukraine and is committed towards NATO, pledging continued military aid. However, internal coalition struggles, economic woes, and rising immigrant-related crimes have weakened his standing. Some believe Defense Minister Boris Pistorius would have been a stronger candidate. Yet Scholz persists, banking on experience and stability to sway voters.
If you want to make sure that Germany invests in growth, that we expand justice in this country, that we have a stable pension, that we ensure that wages rise, the minimum wage, normal wages, that there is relief for the 95% who earn the most, you can't do that by deciding tax cuts for top earners, but by putting your cross for the Social Democratic Party of Germany.
Sondern indem man sein Kreuz bei der Sozialdemokratischen Partei Deutschlands macht.
Alice Weidel of the far-right Alternative for Germany is a controversial figure. Her party polls second overall, but leads in the country's east, fueled by frustration over immigration and economic struggles. Weidel calls for mass deportations, an end to Russian sanctions, and dismantling the EU bureaucracy. She appeals to young voters through social media, gaining momentum. She's also gotten a boost with outright support from billionaire Elon Musk, who was instrumental in Donald Trump's re-election. Following the America First tone, Weidel's slogan Alles für Deutschland echoes nationalist sentiment, but despite surging support, she faces strong opposition. And it's clear that no mainstream party is willing to govern with the AfD, limiting her chances of real power.
My message to head of the Conservative Party Friedrich Merz is, Dear CDU, tear down the undemocratic firewall. You must realize the will of the voters. The AfD is ready. The voters want a blue-black coalition in the Federal Republic of Germany for a real political change. Because we have to save Germany, because our fatherland has gone into a blatant imbalance. No problem drives people as much as having to watch our cities become increasingly unsafe.
Vice-Chancellor Robert Habeck of the left-leaning Greens is a staunch environmental advocate. He champions clean energy, pushing for renewable investments. Habeck also supports increased defense spending in Ukraine's NATO integration. However, past policy setbacks, including watered-down heating reform, dented his popularity, slipping the Greens to the fourth place. Though he remains firm on climate action, rejecting nuclear energy and promoting affordable renewables, but despite tensions with Merz, the Greens may still enter a coalition, and Habeck's mission is clear: a greener, more sustainable Germany.
Germany is in a difficult situation. We are coming out of the traffic light coalition government. The weather is bad, people are flocking in crowds to Green Party. And not only flocking in crowds, but I also experience this as genuine curiosity about democracy and what it has to offer. And I'm hoping that something will emerge that will help us to escape from the gloom that we have all suffered here in Germany, regardless of the election results. But maybe we, the Greens and I, can make a contribution to getting the country back on its feet. And I think that's what the people here are coming to see us for.
With polls around the corner, coalition talks will be crucial. The CDU is expected to win the most seats, but forming a government would not be easy. Merz faces challenges in securing partners, while Scholz fights to stay in power. Weidel shakes the establishment, and Habeck pushes for sustainability to carve his niche. Germany's next chapter unfolds soon. The stakes: nothing less than the future of Europe's largest economy.
And today we end in Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government has called for change, urging universities to expand their recruitment beyond India. Immigration Minister Mark Miller insists that institutions must invest more in global talent and diversify their campuses. His words signal a major shift in Canada's approach to international education, and now Ottawa views Indian students as overrepresented and wants to reduce dependency on their enrollments. Miller also issued a stern warning to students with expired visas, stating, quote, "If you have no right to stay, you must leave," end quote. The message is clear. Canada's priorities have shifted, leaving Indian students uncertain about their future. Our final report explores the new policies and what they mean.
India and Canada's ties crumbled in September 2023 when Justin Trudeau accused India of killing Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh
His baseless claims sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles, and India condemned those allegations as absurd, baseless, and politically motivated. Then last year, in October, Ottawa escalated tensions once again. It named Indian High Commissioner Sanjay Verma a person of interest. And, without much ado, New Delhi retaliated swiftly, expelling 6 Canadian diplomats. The once fragile ties are now beyond repair, and Trudeau's reckless diplomacy has only worsened relations further, despite agreeing he had no concrete evidence against India. But now, Canada has targeted Indian students in a fresh attack. Trudeau's government is urging universities to look beyond India, and Immigration Minister Mark Miller, who leads the latest anti-India campaign, claims Canada must reduce dependency on Indian students, insisting institutions to recruit elsewhere.
I would say universities and colleges have been going to 1 or 2 source countries and constantly going back to the well on that, and we expect the diversity of students.
Miller delivered his message under the guise of diversity. He admitted Indian students are the best and the brightest. Yet, he insisted that recruitment must shift elsewhere.
That doesn't mean that Indian students aren't some of the best and brightest. Indeed, as one of the largest populations in the world, you would expect students to come from India, but have asked universities and colleges to put a little more effort into the price of acquisition and to invest more in the talent that you're bringing here, and that includes going to more countries and expanding your resources.
Now, it's no secret that Canada profited from Indian students for years. But now, Trudeau's government wants to cast them aside, and the hypocrisy is astonishing. According to data from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, approximately 1.3 million Indian students received study permits in Canada between 2015 and 2024. Indian students have fueled Canada's education system. They fill classrooms, pay sky-high tuition, and boost local economies. They even take up jobs, pay taxes, and contribute immensely. But Justin Trudeau's government sees them as disposable assets.
They need students because they need young blood, and they need workforce to run their economy, to run their industries, to run their IT industry and other industries. So what they do is they call students, they train them, they teach them, and then they ask them to work for them as per their convenience.
But the betrayal doesn't stop there. Canada is also cracking down on immigration. Students with expiring postgraduate work permits now face deportation.
We will not be doing what the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump is doing with regard to illegal immigrants. If you are here in an irregular fashion and don't have a right to stay, you need to leave or you will be removed.
There is no pathway and no support, just rejection. It's clear that Ottawa lured these students in with false promises, and now it discards them without hesitation. And now, Trudeau's diplomatic failures are costing Indian students everything. His government refuses to acknowledge the damage it has done. But on the other hand, India has taken note of Canada's actions. Relations are at an all-time low and tensions persist. The message is clear. Canada cannot be trusted. And as Trudeau continues to alienate himself, Canada will suffer. The question is, who will Trudeau betray next before he is pushed out of office?
That's First Post America for this Tuesday, and I'm Eric Ham signing off from our studios in Washington, D.C. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
We're calling the show Vantage. We hope you like what we put together for you. Routed as the minimum defense from that video. India's neighbors were the first to send the special edition of Vantage live from the White House throughout this week. Hindu Mandir in we're on our way to Tel Aviv. Pretty measure, but it's also the perfect way to drive.
I don't think
Prime Minister of Bhutan, Sherin Tagwe. Welcome to
60% of the world's
office. Prime Minister Modi did the iron. We were actually. What are you doing? How do you like? It's been 1 year since that meeting. Iron bars separate you from the outside. Out the vote effort. Trump had, it says, and at $4.3 trillion, 300 billion by 2030. That's what we need to tackle climate change.